Very good morning to all my dear students. I hope you all are fine and taking good care of your health and ready for your English class. So take out your English literature book. Today we will continue chapter 16, An Excellent Father, and we will complete it. So get ready. I am giving you 2 minutes. Be ready with your books. Yes, students. So, what we have read in this chapter, I told you this is an extract from the famous novel Pride and Prejudice. And this is the story of Mr. and Mrs. Bennet, who were worried about their daughter's marriage, especially Mrs. Bennet. Mrs. Bennet informed Mr. Bennet about Mr. Bingley, who was a rich young man of large fortune. He belongs to England and he came there town to stay at Netherfield Park. So Mrs. Bennet was interested and she insisted her husband, Mr. Bennet, to visit Mr. Bingley and maintain acquaintance with him so that he may come at their place and fall in love with one of their daughter. Student acquaintance means to maintain familiar relationship, friendly relationship with someone. So, when she informed Mr. Bennet showed less interest in meeting Mr. Bingley. Rather, he gave two options to Mrs. Bennet. Rather, her she and his daughters go and meet Mr. Bingley, or she advised Mrs. Bennet that she should send her girls only to meet Mr. Bingley. Listening to him, Mrs. Bennet got irritated and she thought that Mr. Bennet was not interested in meeting Mr. Bingley and she got agitated. Later on, we came to know that Mr. Bennet was also interested in meeting Mr. Bingley and he paid a visit to him without informing his family, and his wife was totally unaware about it that Mr. Bennet had already paid a visit to Mr. Bingley and invited him at his place. Later on, his meeting with Mr. Bingley revealed in the following manner that we will study today how it is revealed that Mr. Bennet had already met Mrs. Bingley. Before that, Mr. Bennet showed less interest in front of his wife, rather giving many options to Mrs. Bennet in order to meet Mr. Bingley. And this made his wife angry, agitated, and she got finally irritated. And let's see, due to irritation, how she behaved. And because of that, Mr. Bennet revealed his meeting with Mr. Bingley. So, Mr. Bennet was among the earliest of those who waited on Mr. Bingley. He had always intended to visit him, though to the last always assuring his wife that he should not go. Till the evening after the visit was paid, she had no knowledge of it. It was then disclosed in the following manner. So, the meeting of Mr. Bennet with Mr. Bingley is disclosed in the following manner to the entire family. Okay, so let's see what happened when how Mr. Bennet disclosed his meeting with Mr. Bingley. Observing his second daughter employed in trimming a hat, he suddenly addressed her with, "I hope Mr. Bingley will like it, Lizzie." So, as when he entered the house, Lizzie, as I told you, Lizzie is the name of his daughter. She got a job in trimming a hat. Trimming means to decorate something. When suppose if you're wearing a dress and if you add something accessories to your dress to make it your dress to make your dress beautiful, that is called trimming. So trimming means to decorate something. So when Mr. Bennet saw her daughter trimming a hat, so he addressed her by saying that, I hope Mr. Bingley will like it, Lizzie. We are not to know what Mr. Bingley likes, said her mother, since we are not to visit. Now, as I had already told you that Mrs. Bennet was already agitated with Mr. Bennet as he was not showing any interest to meet Mr. Bingley. So she said, we are not here to show Mr. Bingley what he likes or what he dislikes. When Mr. Bennet addressed her daughter that I hope whatever you are doing, Mr. Bingley will like it. Listening to that, Mrs. Bennet replied that we are not here to know about Mr. Bingley likes and dislikes unless and until we are not paying visit to him. Then for what purpose we should know what he likes or dislikes? But you forget, Mamma, said Elizabeth, that we shall meet him at the assemblies, and that Mrs. Long has promised to introduce him. After that, Elizabeth, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Bennet, talked to her mother that, Mamma, you forgot that Mrs. Long had promised us that she will introduce Mr. Bingley at the assembly. I don't believe Mrs. Long will do any such thing. She has two nieces of her own. She is a selfish woman. So Mrs. Bennet said, I don't think Mrs. Long will do it because she had her two nieces of her own. So I don't think she will do, and according to Mrs. Bennet, Mrs. Long was a selfish woman. Mrs. Bennet began scolding one of her daughters. Now, what happened? As I told you, by nature, she was very irritated. She was very angry with Mr. Bennet. She scolded. Because of that, she scolded her one of her daughter. Scolded means she got angry on one of her daughter. Don't keep coughing so, Kitty. For heaven's sake, have a little compassion on my nerves. Kitty has no discretion in her cough, said her father. She times them ill. I don't cough for my own amusement, said Kitty fretfully. Let us return to Mr. Bingley, continued Mr. Bennet. I am sick of Mr. Bingley, cried his wife. I am so sorry to hear it. Why didn't you tell me so before? If I had known as much this morning, I certainly would not have called on him. But I have actually paid the visit. We cannot escape the acquaintance now. So what happened when Mrs. Bennet scolded one of her daughter for coughing as she got irritated, so she scolded her daughter for no reason. She scolded her for coughing, over which we had no control, over which Kitty had no control, and she said, for heaven's sake, please don't cough, please have some emotions for my feelings. Kitty has no control in her cough, said her father. Listening to that, Kitty got angry and she said that I am not coughing for my amusement. I am not coughing for my comfort. I am not coughing for my fun's sake. It is natural. So, Mr. Bennet, after that, said to Mrs. Bennet, let us continue over the topic of Mr. Bingley. Listening to that, again Mrs. Bingley got irritated and she said, I am sick of Mr. Bingley and I don't want to talk about Mr. Bingley. So this chapter should be closed. Mr. Bennet said, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. So, if it is like that, you should inform me earlier before I paid the visit to Mr. Bingley and I had invited him at our place." So now you are saying that you are not interested in Mr. Bingley. Now I had paid the visit to Mr. Bingley and I had invited him also. Now what to do? But now you can't ignore it. The astonishment of the ladies was just what he wished, and that of Mrs. Bennet surpassing the rest. "How good it was of you, my dear Mr. Bennet," she said. "But I knew I should persuade you at last. I was sure you loved your girls too well to neglect such an acquaintance. Well, how pleased I am, and it is such a good joke too that you should have gone this morning and never said a word about it till now. Now, Kitty, you may cough as you may choose," said Mrs. Bennet, and as he spoke, he left the room. "What an excellent father you have, girls," said Mrs. Bennet when the door was shut. So, what happened when Mr. Bennet disclosed that he had already paid visit to Mr. Bingley and invited him at their place? The girls and Mrs. Bennet, they were surprised, and suddenly Mrs. Bennet changed her tone and she said that, "I knew that you loved your girls too. And I also knew that for the sake of your girls, you will go and pay the visit to Mr. Bingley." And after that, she said her girls that what an excellent father you have. So, this is the story written by Jane Austen. I hope you like the story and the concept of excellent father. With this, I would like to end today's class, and with this, your chapter is complete. So, complete the notes of chapter 16 in your fair notebook in a neat and clean handwriting and send the PDF in the Google Classroom only for checking. Is it clear to everyone? Those who will submit their work on time, they will get marks for that. Is it clear to everyone? Thank you. Till then, take care, stay safe, stay healthy. Meet you soon next week. Thank you.